So I'm here with someone who I feel very fortunate to call a friend, the founder of Bucket.io and the Ask Method, Mr. Ryan Levesque. And I've been not only a student of yours, but a fan of yours for, gosh, we're going on close to a decade now. And I've had the pleasure of working with you. I've implemented your materials for hundreds of different clients. And I'm just really excited to have you here. So everyone, this is Mr. Ryan Levesque.
Russell, it's awesome to be here, man. And you got the best shirt in the room right now. So as we say, build it. Let's do this thing. I'm excited to be here and excited to dive right in.
Yeah, I love it. So we've talked a lot in the past around how I think the deep dive survey, which you've created, is probably the most valuable tool for a business in terms of not just customer research, but we've discovered new product opportunities, new business opportunities. I mean, it is really one of the most valuable exercises I think any business can do out there. And I'd love to just hear from you. You're the creator of it, kind of your experience and what you've seen. Different companies, I know you're the master. You've done thousands and thousands of these, but let's hear a little bit about your background. And I know, you're not just, you've been around the block and the neuroscience behind all this, everything with the deep dive survey. That's what I want to talk about today.
Yeah. So let's talk just super high level briefly. What is a deep dive survey? Even though It's probably not the first time that we're having this conversation, but just so for this conversation for everyone who's part of this here, just so we're all on the same page on what that is and what that means exactly. And then let's talk a little bit about the ways and places and opportunities in your business to use this tool. And then we'll talk about some of the insights and transformation that can happen in your business when you take what you learn from one of these deep dive surveys and you actually apply it to what you do. And there's countless stories that we could share about that. So,
I have some really specific questions I'd like to as we go through that. I want to jump in, and I've got a whole list in front of me of some specific questions.
Awesome.
So let's do it.
I love it. You make my job easy, man. This is great. So deep dive survey at the highest level, what is it? It's a very specific type of open-ended survey that you are using to gain insight from your market. What I mean by open-ended is you're asking open-ended questions, and there are a very specific set of open-ended questions that are designed to do a couple things. They're designed to identify what's called the hyper-responsive segment of your market, which is the segment of your market that's most likely to take action on whatever it is that you're asking them about, whether you're thinking about entering in a new market, launching a new product, creating a new initiative, whatever it may be. And then figure out what is it that specific segment of your market actually needs, wants, and desires. And then one step further, what is the natural consumer language that segment of your market uses to describe their needs, wants, and desires? So therefore, you can then take that information and you can echo it back. You can echo it back in your messaging. You can echo it back in the actual products that you create. You can echo it back across your business. So high level, we could spend 3 hours talking about the nuances of that, but that's what a deep dive survey is in a nutshell. In our company and in every company that we work with, we recommend that before you do anything major, after you do anything major, you are bookending that initiative with a deep dive survey before and after. So the way it looks in practice is as follows. Let's say, for example, you're thinking about launching a new product. Well, maybe there's a topic that this product is around. Before you launch that product, you want to do a deep dive survey to your database, to the audience of people to whom you're going to be selling this product, to figure out what is it that they want, what should the features be, what are people struggling with around this topic. People don't know what they want, so you can't just say, hey, what should we sell? Instead, you want to ask questions around what are the challenges and obstacles and struggles and frustrations you're facing related to the problem that your product solves, because people are really good at being able to articulate that. So you do it before you create that product. Then after you create that product, you want to do a feedback loop survey, which is a variation of a deep dive survey, where you're asking people after they've experienced the product, after they've tried the product, what did we miss? How can we do better? And it's not just products. It's marketing initiatives as well. Let's say, for example, you're doing a marketing launch for something. Before you do the launch, the way we have successful product launches in our business and with our clients is before launching anything, it starts with a deep dive survey. Let's figure out, what is the hook going to be? What's the USP going to be? What are the angles that we're going to use to go into the market? Well, then we sell the thing that we're trying to sell using what we learned from the deep dive survey. After the product launch is over, we do another variation of a deep dive survey. We tongue-in-cheek, as you know, Russell, called this one a tongue-in-cheek name that we called the Do You Hate Me survey. And the Do You Hate Me survey gets its name because you're asking people who did not buy your product why they didn't buy. Was it something you said? Was it something you didn't say? Do they hate your guts? Like, what is it? So it's a tongue-in-cheek way to get their attention. So every time you do something major in your company, before you do it, it starts with a deep dive survey. After you do it, it starts with a feedback loop survey to figure out, what are you going to do different, do again, and not do the next time around. So this really becomes a way of existing, a way of life, a way of doing business that's not just a one-time initiative. It becomes part of your DNA as a company. And I know, Russell, this is what you help companies with all day, every day, is and inject this and other strategies like this. So that big picture, I think, is a good place to start the conversation. And I'm going to turn it back over to you to go through the specific questions that you'd like to talk about in detail around this topic.
Yeah, I look at this as a tool in your toolbox that's, like you said, it's not a one-time thing. It's an indispensable tool. It's like that crescent wrench. You're going to be using it over and over and over. But so let's start with the front end deep dive survey real quick, because I think where I see most people struggling is with two areas within the deep dive survey. The first is around creating the incentive for people to take the survey. You know, where I see a lot of times they want to give away the Amazon gift card. They want to, literally pay people to take the survey.
Right.
I'd love to hear what you've seen with that, what you think of that. And then the second part of the initial deep dive survey struggle is obviously around the SMIQ and how people, it's quite a simple formula, but boy, people really love to make that more complicated than it is.
Right. So two pieces here. So, and you threw out a couple terms that we'll talk about in a minute. So SMIQ stands for single most important question. And the reason why it gets that name is if you were to ask just one question in your survey, this is the one to ask. It's the single most important question, and it follows a specific format. So let's put that in the parking lot for just a minute. Let's talk about the bribe or the incentive that you offer people in exchange for taking your survey. So an important thing on this, a big kind of first place that people naturally go when they think, okay, great, I've got to reach out to my database, reach out to my list and ask them to complete this survey. I'm going to offer some sort of freebie, some sort of gift, like an Amazon gift card, or win a chance to win an iPad or something like that. And that is the absolute wrong thing to do. And the reason for that is you're attracting a segment of your market that is motivated by that thing. They are motivated by the Amazon gift card. Instead, you want the inherent benefit of providing you their feedback being the fact that they're going to be heard, and therefore the product, resource, or thing that you create is going to incorporate that feedback. Now, by doing that, you create a bias toward people who are interested enough in the topic you're surveying about that they are likely to be candidates to purchase your product or service around that thing. So let's make it a concrete example. Let's say you're creating a new online course about losing weight. You might ask a deep dive survey, and you might say, when it comes to losing weight, what's your biggest challenge? Well, by asking that question and saying, by taking the time to tell me about your situation, I will incorporate your feedback in the programs and resources that we put together solving this problem. Now, think about that. If you don't care about losing weight, you're not going to take time to fill out that survey. But if losing weight is something that you've struggled with, you've been saying, gosh, Russell, like, here's the thing I'm struggling with. Can you please help me? Here's where I'm at. The person who wants a solution to that problem is going to be motivated to take your survey, knowing that you're going to be taking their feedback into account when you create the product. So it's an important distinction. Now, will it result in a slightly lower response rate? Chances are yes, because you're not bribing them with cash or some other irrelevant thing. You want the incentive to be that they are going to get access to a resource or a product or something that's going to benefit them. Now, if you absolutely need to offer something and you're struggling to get responses, let's say you go this route and you're saying, I did this and nobody responded, the incentive to offer is some variation of what I'm about to say. As a way of saying thanks for taking the time to tell me a little bit about your situation, I'd love to offer you a 75% discount off the program when we make it available, off the product when it launches, as a way of saying thanks for your time. Now, the reason why that's okay, and it's different categorically from offering someone an Amazon gift card, is because if I'm not interested in that thing at all, that 75% discount means nothing to me. But if I am interested in losing weight, the fact that I get a discount off the product that I'm helping to co-create with my feedback, that's very motivating. So that's the incentive piece. So that's the first part of the equation. Second piece is, you alluded to the SMIQ, single most important question. If you ask just one question, what is it? It's an open-ended question, and it follows a very specific format, and it looks like this. When it comes to X, X being the thing that you help people with in your product, when it comes to losing weight, when it comes to growing your orchids, when it comes to improving your memory, what's your single biggest challenge, frustration, or obstacle that you've been struggling with? Please be as detailed and specific as possible. Now, the reason for that format, if we dissect it, it's simplicity on the far side of complexity. What you're working to elicit is you want people to share their challenge and frustration, because here's the thing. While people don't know what they want in life, people are really good at telling you what they don't want. You know, there's so many quotes. There's a quote attributed to Henry Ford. If I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. Steve Jobs is famous for having said, people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And the reason why quotes like that ring true is because they are true. People don't know what they want. We're not good at being able to say, if I said, hey, Russell, like, what would your dream car look like? Like, just describe your dream car. What would be perfect for you? Your brain is going to speculate.
I love this because it's not even dream car. I don't even know what I want for dinner tonight.
Exactly.
You know,
let's get dinner, man. What do you feel like? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't have any idea.
Yeah, you're asking your brain to speculate. But if instead we ask a different type of question, we say, all right, think about the car you're driving right now. I want you to think about the car you're driving right now. I want you to imagine opening your driver's side door, stepping into the driver's seat, putting your seatbelt on, and telling me as you look at your car right now, if there's one thing that you could change, if there's one thing that bugs you, one thing that annoys you about your car right now, what might that be? Your brain.
My car right now?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you have an answer to that. You might be like, let me make the list.
Yeah, it's the loads of trash that my kids have left in the car, in all honesty. I mean, it's the fact that it's a constant battle of, keeping it clean and trying to keep it nice. And it's a utility vehicle. So it's constantly a mess,
we have these things most of us can think about, like the car that Tylene previously drove, the GPS, a very expensive car, luxury car. The GPS was a total waste. It was a new car. The GPS felt like it was like 15 years old. We never used it. We just used the Google Maps on our phone instead of the GPS, because you have to punch like 17 menus into the system, versus the car that I was driving at the time was a Tesla Model S, which had a 17-inch touchscreen.
Beautiful screen.
That's just like the most intuitive thing that you can use in the world. And it's so easy to use. And so every time I drive my wife's car, I would just be so frustrated with the GPS. So the point is, we're really good at identifying what it is that we don't want. And the way we elicit that is by identifying the frustrations, the mistakes, the obstacles that we're having. We're really good at pointing out the problems, not so good at identifying what those solutions might be. That's your job as an entrepreneur. That's all of our job. Yep. Our job is to take those problems and then use our creative brain power to say, I think I might be able to solve that. That's not your customer's job. Your customer's job is to help you identify what the mistakes and challenges and frustrations and obstacles that they're having, which then lead to you creating and building the right thing. So that's the SMIQ. When it comes to X, what's your single biggest challenge? Please be as detailed as possible.
And what I love about this process, and the reason I asked those two questions in particular at the same time, I didn't mean to throw you a ball, but it's this idea, and then it follows up into the last segment of the hyper responsives. But it's what you want to do is with the incentive. What I try to advise businesses to do is, have something that's congruent with the problem solution that you're serving. So, the great example, like you just said, is I'm working now with a CBD company, and they have to be pretty careful on what they say and do. So for them, the obvious solution is just a discount on their product, right? But what I love about this is that there's such, you have such a deep background in neuroscience, and like none of this is random. It's all rooted in science. But when people go to claim that discount for the products, it actually puts the idea of what they want in their head. So right the next screen, when they see the deep dive survey and they get to that SMIQ where we reiterate the benefit or the value of the solution that you're providing, and then we ask them what's keeping them from that, I've seen it just really get them mentally to a place where they're not stumbling for words. They know exactly and are able to define exactly what it is that they're struggling with. And so that's some of the nuance and beauty of the whole process you invented that I just absolutely love.
For sure. Yeah. It's, and I want to give credit where credit's due. I studied, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Every scientific discovery is a result of centuries of science that preceded that discovery. And so for me, I studied very closely under Dr. Glenn Livingston, who's a social psychologist by training, who took a lot of what he learned in his clinical practice and started applying it in a consumer setting like this. And I, as his disciple, his acolyte, have brought this in a way that's reached many more people and have refined it further. So, and then Glenn would be the first to say that, his, predecessors informed him in so many ways. So this is truly, it is rooted in science. It's rooted in neuroscience. This isn't new, invented out of thin air. There is a progression that's taken us to this very moment that makes this approach so effective, and something that's been tested and stress tested in literally thousands of different markets, millions of different, tens of millions of consumers. To put it in perspective, our software that you talked about, we have over 300 million data points annually. So 300 million data points from people who go through this process that we're able to analyze on a macro level, on a global level, not just on an individual campaign, based on what we have access to. So we know truly what makes a difference and what moves the needle in a huge way. So, this is very scientific, as you pointed out, and data driven. But what's interesting is that what it leads to is it helps shape the art of one's business. The words that you're using to describe your products, to describe it in a way that people feel like they say, oh my gosh, it's like you can read my mind. It's like,
I love that response. And it's true. That's literal. Like, we get people that say that. It's amazing. And I'm glad you brought up the mentor thing, because I feel like you're right. And whether you know it or not, like, you're one of my mentors. I think you're one of the smartest people out there. And, I'm your disciple. So I'm pushing this forward to my people and the people I work with. So
I love it.
Thank you very much for that. So let me ask you this. On that note, a lot of the businesses that I work with classify themselves as this B2B, which they, for some reason, think marketing is different for B2B. I love it. But so when they're a low transaction volume company and they say maybe only have half a dozen or a dozen clients per year, where they don't have the volume to do like a deep dive survey, what is it that you typically recommend for a company like this?
Great. It's a great question. And so a deep dive survey takes 3 different forms. So what we've been talking about up until this point is what we call a classic deep dive survey. Classic deep dive survey is you reach out to a database of people, typically via email. You send an email to them and you say something along the lines of what we've just been talking about. Hey, we're thinking about putting together this program. Before we do so, we want to get your feedback. Would you take a moment and tell me a little bit about your situation? When it comes to losing weight, what's your biggest challenge? Click the link below. Mechanically, the 100,000 people who get that email, a fraction of them click on the link, a fraction of those people fill out the survey, a fraction of those people give you their name and email and contact information, and then you have a spreadsheet that you're analyzing with all of this information. That's a classic deep dive survey. Now, that works when you have a relatively large database of people that you can reach out to. What happens, like in the situation described, if you don't have that resource? Well, then you move to the next type of deep dive survey, which is what we call a lean deep dive survey. A lean deep dive survey is one where instead of reaching out to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to fill out a survey, you're instead having a small fraction of one-on-one conversations with people where you're asking not only the SMIQ, but because it's a one-on-one back and forth interaction, it enables you to go much deeper with that individual. So instead of being limited to someone clicks on a link, they fill out a survey question and hit submit, you can have a back and forth conversation where you can invite people to say, tell me a little bit more about that. You just said something that really fascinated me. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that? And you can go deep down the rabbit hole with a small number of individuals. Now, the way the math works out is for a classic deep dive survey to be relevant, you need at an absolute minimum 250 responses. 250 responses is the bare minimum. And I know a lot of the work that you do, you'll often have thousands of responses. Larger companies, bigger databases, especially B2C, consumer businesses, huge databases, thousands and thousands of responses. So it's never really an issue. What happens if you can't get the 250? Well, you do the lean. How many leans do you need to do? Do you have to have 250 one-on-one conversations? No. The way the math works out is it's about a 25-to-1 ratio, meaning you can have about 10 lean deep dive survey conversations that gives you the equivalent quality of data that you would otherwise have with 250 classic deep dive survey responses. Now, you might be saying, really? 10 conversations, is that enough? The thing that you're looking for is you want to keep having conversations until you're starting to hear the same things coming up over and over again. And you'll know when you experience this. You'll start to say, gosh, I keep hearing this again. Like I'm doing a deep dive survey on keto, for example, on the ketogenic diet. And I keep hearing people talking about the keto flu. It's the 3rd one in a row. People say, keto flu, how do I get over the keto flu? That's giving me some indication that maybe that's a problem that we can help address in the market. Keto flu is the thing. Because these are one-on-one conversations, every person you have is treated as a hyper-responsive. The only way someone's going to be willing to get on the phone with you or get in a chat conversation with you on Facebook or, Instant Messenger or Skype or on WhatsApp, the only way that they're going to be willing to do that is if they care enough about the topic. No one's going to waste their time in a conversation that they don't care about. Okay, so classic is the gold standard. Next best thing is a lean deep dive survey. Now, what happens if you're entering a new market or you have a relatively small business and you have nobody to reach out to? There's a 3rd type of deep dive survey, 3rd category. It's what we call a stealth deep dive survey. A stealth deep dive survey is where you're going into communities, forums, and groups that exist online. And without engaging anybody individually, you're looking for what are the hyper-responsive conversations that are naturally taking place. You're using the search function in a Facebook group or forum, and you're looking for words like challenge. You're searching for words like obstacle, searching for words like frustration, pain. And by the way, even if you have a big business, if you have a community of people, this is something you can also do as a supplementary step. And you're looking for the natural language patterns that are emerging, the conversations that are taking place, the topics that are getting, someone posts something about it and it has 500 comments from people saying, yes, me too, me too. Those are all indications that that's a topic that represents opportunity for you to pursue in your business. So Gold standard's a classic deep dive survey. Next best thing is a lean deep dive survey. Next best thing is a stealth deep dive survey. So those are the three kind of ways to get access to this information.
So you mentioned this word hyper responsive, and I'd love to talk about that for just a quick minute, because earlier in my course, I teach people how to basically, we use a lot of, and I'm doing one of these sessions with Perry Marshall on the power of the 80-20. And that's what we're doing, is we're getting into their existing customer base, and we're finding the 80-20. Every business owner's heard that idea of, 80% of your revenues are driven by 20% of your customers. And what's really, really interesting with this whole process is that when the 80-20 is powerful, but when you 80-20 the 80-20, you start getting superpowers, like Wonder Twin type powers. Right. And what we're doing with this hyper responsive is we're already talking to the 80-20 of your ideal customers, but then you take and add in that second 80-20 of the hyper responsives. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is a hyper responsive, and how do you typically identify those people?
Great question. So we'll talk. I always like to think about things in three levels: philosophy, methodology, technology. So philosophy is sort of the big, broad idea behind something. Methodology is the practical application of how to execute that thing. And then technology is how do we put a rules-based ones and zeros approach so that this is so black and white, a machine could execute this step. So philosophy, hyper-responsive. What we're looking for is an indication that someone is likely to be a buyer of a product in order to treat their response in a way that we pay attention versus everybody else we ignore. Now, why do we do that? I've got a story I can share on this front. So one of my favorite companies in the world is a company called Lego. We all know Lego. We love Lego. I'm what they call an A-full, which stands for adult fan of Lego. I spend more money on Lego than probably anything in my life. It's my golf equivalent hobby. I've got two boys. We've built the largest Lego sets that exist. We build a Lego set pretty much every week together. Sometimes we got more than one Lego set. Lego's a big part of our life. So love Lego.
Are you a free builder, or are you
we do free building mocks. We do. I like to meditate while just building a straight set. Just because I think it's very meditative, and you don't have to think. You're just kind of following the process. So we do a bit of everything. But Lego as a company, not just as a product, is a very fascinating company to study. At the turn of the 21st century, 2000, right around 2000, Lego was actually at risk of going out of business. And they were at risk of going out of business because they were in pursuit of expanding. They were trying to expand the market. And so they did a deep dive survey. They didn't call it a deep dive survey. They did a deep dive survey to the market, and they asked people, why are you not buying Lego? To try to expand the market, to try to figure out non-buyers. How do we attract more people to buy our stuff? Which is what a lot of companies do, right? How do we get more people to buy our stuff? And what they found is that the overwhelming response was that Lego is too hard, takes too long. And so they said, great. Well, let's make easier sets that have fewer pieces, sets that have like pieces that are kind of pre-put together, so larger pieces, because people were saying they don't want to build the thing, they just want to play with the thing. Okay, great. So Lego did this. And they went all in on this strategy. And as a result, they almost were forced to file for bankruptcy. And in one last ditch effort, they went back to ask their market. But this time they did something different. They asked their most passionate, most fervent fans, what are we doing wrong? What are we missing? And they said, we don't want sets with fewer pieces. We want sets with more pieces. We don't want sets that are easier to build. We want sets that are harder to build. We don't want sets that we can build in a day. We want sets that'll take us a month to build.
Yeah.
So as an experiment, Lego created their first 1,000-piece set, and it flew off the shelves, sold faster than anything that they'd ever put together. They launched a 2,000-piece set, a 3,000-piece set, a 4,000-piece set, a 5,000-piece set, a 7,000-piece Millennium Falcon. The biggest up until very recently was a 7,000-piece Millennium Falcon. Second biggest set was the Hogwarts Castle, which is just over 6,000 pieces. They just launched the Colosseum in Rome, which is almost 10,000 pieces.
Holy cow.
And they continue to push the envelope. Now, the punchline to this story is today, Lego is the most valuable toy brand in the entire world. They sell one product, Lego. It's not like one of these conglomerates like Hasbro, Mattel, or any of these other toy companies, Disney, that has a million different properties. They've got one franchise, Lego. And they're one of the most valuable brands of all industries in the entire world. So what can we unpack from this? We can unpack that the biggest mistake people make is they pay attention to the wrong data. You want to pay attention to the responses that indicate this is someone who will likely be a buyer of this product. And in order to do that, we 80-20 the results. We look at the top 20% of responses that represent the longest, most detailed, most passionate answers. And here's the kicker. You ignore everybody else. You ignore everybody else. You look at what is the difference between the hypers and non-hypers. You use tools like word clouds to figure out what language are the hyper-responsives using and how is that language different from everybody else. Not the overlap, but what are the words and phrases that these people use that this group of people are not using. So we have all these tools at our disposal to figure this out. We look at our hyper-responses. And then with that information, we analyze those responses and ignore the rest. Now, speaking of 80-20, I feel like in many ways, I'm a social scientist studying this at scale and looking for ways to further and further refine the process. Well, speaking of Perry Marshall and 80-20, we asked ourselves, what is the 80-20 of the hyper responsive? So in other words, how do we identify the top 20% of our hyper responsives within that segment of the market? And we developed a concept called not just hyper responsive, but hyper invested. Now, here's the reason why. We discovered that in some cases, not all, you can sometimes run into false positives. And what I mean by that is you can sometimes run into groups of people that give you long, detailed, passionate responses, but aren't necessarily buyers or potential buyers of the product. These could be people who are home, alone, with a lot of time on their hands. They might be on a fixed income or disability income and don't have the means to purchase something. They may be a false positive. So how do we eliminate that group of people? Well, there's another concept that I think is important to know, and that's this. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. If you meet two people, one person has worked out at a gym every day of their life for the last 5 years versus someone who's never worked out a day in their life. And if you were to put a bet on which of those two people is going to work out at the gym tomorrow, who are you going to bet on?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the guy or woman who worked out at the gym every day for the last however many years. That's who you're going to bet on. Well, bringing that idea, that concept to this 80-20 of the hyper responsive, we developed this concept called hyper invested. And we identified that by asking two additional questions. Not only what's the biggest challenge that you have, but two other questions. When it comes to solving that challenge, how much time have you invested trying to reach a solution? 5 minutes? 5 days? 5 years? And then a third question, in addition to time, how much money have you spent
good one.
trying to solve this problem? And then these three data points in combination with one another is the single most accurate way to identify who you should pay attention to, what that specific subsegment of your audience needs, wants, and desires, and it allows you to ignore everybody else. It empowers you to just get to the 80-20 of the 80-20, put the blinders on to everything else, and create a product and a marketing message that speaks to that specific subsegment of your market and is the perfect fit offer, the perfect fit message for them. And you can launch whatever you're going to launch with confidence, knowing how laser focused it is. It is, like Perry Marshall says, shooting fish in a barrel with an Uzi machine gun. Yeah. And I know that's a bit crass and a little bit violent, But the point is, you're creating a setup for yourself. You literally just have to knock the dominoes over and you're going to win. You just got to follow the process. And the beautiful thing is that I know you help people with this all day, every day. And when they work with you to do this, it's just like, it's why it works.
It literally sometimes is like magic. It is so powerful. And that's awesome because I've been using the difficulty question a lot. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because also the next question we've started to incorporate, but it actually blends better with your questions that I'm going to start incorporating is, all right, how much time do you spend on it? How much money do you spend on it? And then the third question that we've used a lot, and I don't know if you have experience doing this or not, is we ask, where do you go to find the information or the solutions for this problem? And
it's the why. What else have you tried?
Because we actually, we completed a survey earlier this year and the marketing team was looking for where do they allocate their budget, right? And this is why it's so powerful because we were able to, we did the analysis on that data, now we were able to say, well, look, 42% of the people go to Facebook to find an answer. The remainders go to YouTube and then they go to forums and then they go to their neighbors and friends and family. But that gave us like concrete numbers and data now where we can allocate dollars and attention and make some decisions on where we want to spend our very limited resources to make all this work. Have you a lot of experience with finding that where piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, what's interesting about this is oftentimes we will survey people at the source, through the source. So in other words, you can do this directly and you can do this indirectly. So the indirect way is you look at your existing database that you have access to, and you have to have a little bit of forethought ahead of time to do this, but you want to know the source through which they came into your world. In other words, did they come into your world through YouTube as a channel, whether it's organic or paid? Did they come into your world through Facebook, organic or paid? Because chances are the way in which they came into your world is the way in which they come into other people's worlds as well. So there's that way to do it. The other way to do it is you actually go to the source. So you can use these channels directly to run one of these ask method campaigns directly to the source. And you can see, are there any material differences between the people who answer this set of questions through Facebook as a channel versus YouTube as a channel or Google as a channel or Instagram as a channel, whatever channel that you might pursue. So there are a couple ways that you can do it.
Like whatever.
For sure. But there's one other thing I'll add to that, and that is the single most important question and the two follow-ups. If you were to ask nothing else, those are them. But you can ask additional questions beyond that. So one of the strategies that I teach is to add what we call a grease the wheels question before the SMIQ. So sometimes when people are greeted with a big open-ended question, it's met with resistance. But by just, as counterintuitive as this may sound, adding an additional question before that is a radio select. So what most people describe as multiple choice. Are you A or B? Easy to answer, low threshold, typically a binary choice question. Are you starting a new business or are you expanding an existing business? Right. Are you filling this out on behalf of yourself or are you a caretaker for somebody else? A simple non-threatening question like that gets the ball rolling. It greases the wheels. It's an involvement mechanism where people kind of dip their toe in the water. And then when they're greeted with the open-ended, you can really, you can get a higher response rate. You can also do the same thing on the tail. After they're involved, you've gotten them over the hump with that big, hairy, scary, open-ended question. You can tack on a few demographic questions on the back end, which are the type of things that you're talking about. So where do you typically get your information? What other products have you tried in the past? And the key distinction I wanted to raise, and it's an important one, is not how much time do you spend, how much money do you spend? It's how much time have you spent?
Right.
How much money have you spent? You want to know what someone has done because, well, people are very bad at predicting what they'll do in the future, they're much more accurate at being able to say, oh, I've probably spent in an order of magnitude, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, or tens of dollars. It's a pretty accurate depiction of what that is.
Key point. We don't want them to speculate.
That's the message. We're not good speculators.
Well, I know I really want to respect your time, and I know we're coming up on the top of the hour. The last thing I want to address that we haven't touched on, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to do more of these, is the technology of how do you execute this? Because that's also the second biggest hurdle, that people have is once they've got the deep dive formatted, how do you execute this? And I know you have a solution.
Right. So
it is a wonderful solution. So let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, we've been teaching this for years, and there are a lot of different ways you can do it. You can do it in a very manual way, but we built a technology solution that does this and a lot more. It does something that we don't have time to talk about, which is a quiz funnel, which is where you take the information from this deep dive survey and you build a marketing engine that serves as the front end of your business, where you're asking people a series of questions so you can funnel them into the best product. Or if you sell a single product, a targeted marketing message based on that product, targeted case studies, targeted testimonials, and you're building a database on the front end that doesn't just know a person's name and email, but knows their name, email, and 27 other data points that you've gathered on the front end. So it does all of that. But with respect to a deep dive survey specifically, the software solution that we're talking about is a tool called Bucket. It's bucket.io, and it does all the heavy lifting for you. So all the templating, so you don't have to invent these things from scratch. All the back-end architecture of connecting it to your email platform so everything gets fed that way. The algorithmic calculation to derive your hyper-responsive. So you're not trying to do some crazy math equation on the back end to try to figure out who are my hypers and how do I figure this out? The hyper-invested segment of your population. So you can really drill down on that group of people. And then also the language analysis as well. Things like word clouds and things like that. Separating the word cloud from your hypers and non-hypers so you can identify what are the differences in language patterns. So it does all that sort of technical heavy lifting for you that, you could do it as a smart human, but technology just makes it so much easier. And it's a fit for purpose tool. It's designed with this specific use case in mind. So Bucket.io, I know you've used it on a bunch of your projects and campaigns with Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and some of the other big ones that you've been a part of. So it's that's the tool that we recommend. Of course, I'm biased, but it was built with this specific use case. Well, and that's
why I wanted to touch on it too, because it is a specific tool. And people today, we're talking about, one of the challenges with marketing is limited time, money, and resources. So if you can come in and use the right tool for the right job, you're not wasting any of that. It is the most efficient solution to do this.
For sure. Absolutely.
So, well, we're at the top of the hour, Ryan. I hope we can expand on this. You touched on the whole quiz funnels. There's so much value that you have. I hope we can tap into you again here in the future. But I really wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. It means a lot to me. Like I said, you're one of my mentors, and it's been a real privilege just to talk with you. And if I can get more people into your world and to learn from you, then I've done my job.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I like to geek out over this stuff. I just know when good people and good businesses use this process, it allows you to do even more good. At the end of the day, this is all designed to help you better sell, but even more importantly, better serve. You're ultimately able to better serve your audience. And when you truly care about your customer and you have this methodology that allows you to better serve the group of people you're already serving and expand that reach, that's how I get fulfillment. I love doing that. And I know all the work that you're doing is helping further that. So it's been fun. And we should definitely do this again sometime in the future. And maybe we'll swap shirts. You'll wear the red one. I'll wear the blue one. This was not planned, ladies and gentlemen. I literally, you can ask Gary. He's in the room with me. I said, before I hop on this interview, I just got to throw a shirt on so I look presentable here. This is the shirt that I grabbed. And lo and behold, great minds think alike. So Russell, thanks so much for this.
I've been waiting to wear this shirt. today.
Great. Listen, man, we'll talk soon, and wishing you the best of luck. And everyone watching this right now, hopefully this has been helpful, and looking forward to the next time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Awesome. Take care.